Hello, Internet. Today's vlog, I am not going anywhere, but I'm sitting here on the couch. Good morning, kind people of the Internet. Today I had rehearsal with my Butler University combo, and we ended up talking a little bit about learning standards. One of the students was preparing a couple of tunes for a lesson he had coming up, and so he was saying that he was trying to learn the melody and the chord changes to this tune. So I thought it could be useful to maybe delve into the idea of learning tunes here on the vlog. So today what I'd like to try to do in hopefully a clear and concise way is explain the three most important steps in learning a standard. And what I'd like to do later on is do a much more thorough and comprehensive lesson video on this topic, but today I'm just going to talk about the three main steps. So if you're like a high school musician or like maybe a college musician or even an adult musician who is trying to expand your repertoire of tunes, these are the steps that I've found have worked the best. So when I followed these steps for the tunes that I've learned now, I'm much more comfortable improvising on them than if I didn't follow these steps. And I think what I'd also like to do in a separate video is just explain the importance of learning standards and tunes, but I realize that can be a pretty deep topic as well. So I think the tendency among students when they're trying to learn new material is to pull out a real book or a lead sheet and just play the tune down by reading it, and then if they're playing with a group, maybe improvise just by reading the chord changes. So I actually think this is pretty problematic if you get in this habit, and I'll explain why I think that in the longer lesson video. But this takes us to our first step, which is listening to recordings of the tune. So what you want to try to do is let your ears completely absorb the sound of the tune without looking at it. So ultimately we're trying to learn it by sound and not by sight. So what you can do if you have iTunes or Spotify or CDs or however you're listening to music, try to find as many versions of the tune as you can. You can maybe make a playlist, and you want to just try to get a really broad spectrum. So especially if we're talking about standards, some of these tunes have been recorded for maybe almost 100 years in certain cases. So there are going to be a lot of different versions. So then pick maybe your favorite 5 or so tracks, and then just give these a lot of listens. And also it's helpful to know what the sort of definitive version is. So if it's a tune written by Miles Davis, if he recorded it first, that most likely is going to be the definitive version of that, and you want to get most comfortable with that version because people will play it a lot of times based off of how he played it. Even if maybe like 10 or 20 other people recorded it after him, it's good to be really familiar with how he played it. And then later you can add some of the different things that other people did to certain tunes. So listening, just getting it in your ear to the point where you can sing it and you can kind of hear what's happening with the chord changes in the form. Even if you don't know exactly what the chord changes are, just getting an idea of how it sounds like they're moving. Okay, so step number 2 in this process is just getting out your instrument and trying to play now what is in your ears. So hopefully you've listened to maybe your favorite version of the tune maybe 10 or 20 times, and most likely you'll be able to play the entire melody on your instrument. So maybe check with the recording, start the recording and try to find your first note on your instrument, and then turn the recording off. See if you can play through the whole melody just on your instrument. And I think you'll actually surprise yourself here by how well you can do it. So again, I'm suggesting not to get out the real book or a lead sheet, but just see how much you can piece together by only using your ears. So hopefully you can figure out the melody without too much difficulty, and then turn the recording back on and try to piece together measure by measure what's happening with the root movement and the chord quality. So if you can hear the bass well, you can most likely at least figure out the roots of every chord. And then if there's a copying instrument, you can hear if they're playing a major chord, a minor chord, or different colors. Even if you're not sure what it is, if you can just get the bass movement, then you can really piece together a lot of what's happening with the harmony. So after you've done these steps, after you've gone as far as you can by just using your ears, then I would consult a reliable lead sheet or real book and just look at the chord changes and see if it matches what you thought your ears were hearing. And depending on where you are in your development, you may be able to get every single chord perfect, or you may just have just like a couple of chords correct. But I think the act of actually going through and trying to learn it that way is going to be much more beneficial down the road than trying to read it and learn it by sight initially. So that brings us to the third step, which is now just playing that tune a lot with different people in different settings. So this idea of repetition, especially early on when you're learning a tune, I think can be super helpful. So now we're trying to learn the tune in a really deep way where you're not really having to think about the chord changes, but you can more just hear the sound of the band and know where we are and what's happening with the harmony and the melody and just the whole sound of the group. So those are the three main steps that I found to be most useful when I'm trying to learn tunes. So I know when I follow that process on a particular tune, it really helps me down the road with memorization and also just comfort level when I'm trying to improvise over a certain set of chord changes. All right, I hope some of you musicians out there found this helpful. And again, watch out for a longer lesson video with more details on this process. I think there are a lot of sort of like sub steps as well to each thing that I know that I do that have really helped me a lot. And I just want to share all of that. But for now, if you're somebody who's learning tunes, maybe try out these three general steps first. And they are a bit more challenging than just cracking open the real book initially, but I think it will help a lot down the road. So thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.